Every shrimp farmer thinks the story of aquaculture begins in the pond, but the truth is, it begins in the ocean because the feed that powers aquaculture still depends on marine ingredients, primarily fish meal and fish oil. Globally, aquaculture now consumes roughly 70 to 75% of all fish meal and about 80% of fish oil produced in the world. These ingredients are incredibly powerful nutritionally. They deliver essential amino acids, omega 3 fatty acids, and unmatched palatability. But they also raise difficult questions. Where do these fish come from? Are the fisheries managed responsibly? And can we trace these ingredients back to the ocean they come from? Today, we are going to explore the invisible backbone of aquaculture, marine ingredients. And to help us understand how sustainability, aquaculture, fisheries, and feed connect together, I'm joined by someone who works right at this intersection. Libby Woodhatch. She is the executive chair of Marine Trust, the global certification program working to ensure fish meal and fish oil come from responsible fisheries. With more than 20 years of experience across seafood policy, fisheries, and supply chains, Libby has been instrumental in building systems that bring transparency and sustainability into one of the most complex supply chains in the seafood industry. Libby, welcome to the Aquafeed podcast.
Thank you very much, Risha. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you today.
Great, Libby. Good to have you. So, before we dive into sustainability debates, let's start with the science. Marine ingredients, particularly fish meal and fish oil, have been the nutritional backbone of aquaculture for decades. In shrimp aquaculture, feeds typically contain 10 to 12% of fish meal and 1 to 2% of fish oil. And these ingredients provide nutritional properties and exceptional palatability, right? And this is why even today, despite the emergence of soy, algae, insect proteins, and fermentation-based feeds, marine ingredients still play a strategic role in aquaculture nutrition. So, Libby, I just want to know from your perspective, like from Marine Trust perspective, why do marine ingredients continue to remain so critical for aquaculture?
Mm-hmm. I think you've described it really well, Risha, already. And you're right that marine ingredients, so fish meal and fish oil, we're predominantly speaking about, remain the most digestible and nutritious source of nutrition for aquafeed, whether that's shrimp feed or salmon feed. They're also the best source of omega-3 fatty acids, which are all essential for the development and growth of shrimp and any farm species that is carnivorous. So they're critical. And although we've seen the reduction in the volume of marine ingredients within aquafeed, they still remain a critical component that you couldn't completely eliminate. And also we need to have a balance that some of those ingredients that have been substituted, because the opinion has been that marine ingredients are not great for the environment, have actually had bigger environmental impacts due to greater land use. We've seen a paper from the University of Stirling that was published last month that was comparing the use of marine ingredients against soluble soy protein and rapeseed oil, and the impacts of those substitutes were massive in terms of global climate effect on the climate, use of land, eutrophication. So marine ingredients have often been sort of badged as the bad guy, but the reality is actually very, very different.
Right, right. And if I put that scale into perspective, like globally, every year we produce approximately 5 million tons of fish meal and 1 million tons of fish oil globally.
Correct.
And most of these ingredients come from small pelagic fishes like sardines, mackerel, anchoveta. So as aquaculture expanded globally from about 20 million tons in 1990 to more than 130 million tons
Mhm.
today, demand for feed ingredients also grew, right? And
Correct.
that
Yes.
triggered a fundamental sustainability question that are we putting too much pressure on wild fisheries to feed
Mhm.
farmed fish?
Well, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head, so to speak, is that the reason we were set up, so Marine Trust was established in 2009, was because the industry, it was actually an industry-led initiative. They wanted to be able to provide those assurances that IUU, so illegal, unregulated, unreported fish, wasn't ending up in the value chain for marine ingredients. And they needed to go away about it in a way that was credible. So working with NGOs and other stakeholders, the standard was developed, the factory standard. And although we own the standard program, it's independently third-party certified to ensure that credibility. And that was really to provide those assurances and say, yes, we've seen aquaculture rise. Yes, we have seen an insatiable demand for marine ingredients. But if you're sourcing marine ingredients, then ensure that those marine ingredients are certified so that you have got assurances around the raw material source, so that they come from responsibly managed fisheries, that they're responsibly produced in the factory, and you've also got assurances around traceability as well. And that will cover everything, not just fish sustainability, traceability, but also covering data elements such as human rights and other things that have become really important. When we were first established, people only spoke about the fish, and there's a lot more to the supply chains than fish. So a program standard is all about continuous improvement. So the bar is constantly nudged higher and higher. For example, in our factory standard, we're now operating on version 3 of the standard, and that's very different to version 1 that was launched in 2009.
Right, right. And if you could just explain a little bit on how do you define a fishery as a responsible fishery?
Okay, so our unit of certification is the actual factory that produces the fish meal and fish oil. But a prerequisite for those being able to go forward to audit is that they must have approved raw material going into their factory before they can be audited, and any certified marine ingredients have to come from approved raw material. So that's any raw material sourcing. So those fisheries are assessed by the independent fisheries assessor from the certification body against the FAO Code of Conduct for Responsible Fishing. If they pass that, then they then become approved raw material that can be used in the production of certified marine ingredients. To ensure that we don't have like a big audit burden on factories as well, we also have formal recognition procedures. So any fisheries standard that's GSSI benchmarked and GSSI recognized as a credible standard, we also recognize. So the auditor will undertake formal verification procedures. So again, that will be approved raw material going in. And apart from just looking at the fisheries biology side of that and the environmental impact side as well, our traceability system kicks in at the vessel level. So we're aligned with the Global Dialogue for Seafood Traceability. We have key data elements that go right back to the vessel. So, the vessel that caught it, its IMO number, the flag state. So again, ensuring that there is no IUU entering that and that the fisheries it's coming from are responsibly managed. We base it against the FAA Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries. So, that's kind of like the global benchmark. Fisheries certifications use that to underpin what they do. Everything goes back to the FAA Code of Conduct. So that's our norm globally.
Right, right. And if you could just also highlight how many fishery improvement projects are running globally.
Well, I'll explain a little bit about a fisheries improvement project
Yeah.
first as well. So if I was a fish meal producer and I was sourcing my raw material, but those fisheries can't yet meet the standard or of the criteria within the FAO Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries, then this is where our improver program kicks in. So it's about a time-bound, credible pathway for those fisheries to go through steps to improve. So at a point they will have improved enough that they become approved raw material, and the factory can be fully certified. So around the world, we have a number of fisheries improvement projects that have been developed, and they've applied to come into the Marine Trust program, the Marine Trust Improver program. They have to go through, a number of processes. So they have to undertake a gap analysis against standards. They have to have a fisheries action plan. All the people within that fisheries improvement project have to sign a memorandum of understanding and be very clear about where they're going and when they're going to meet milestones. Everything they do has to be independently peer reviewed. So it's a way of trying to, the marine ingredient sector, helping the global fisheries improve, so they then will reach that mark of being responsible.
Right. So, Libby, I will get back to all the pillars of marine trust certification standards that you have. Like you have like marine trust standards, and then factory standard, and then improvement.
Yes.
Right. We will come back on this later so that it is more understandable to the audience. But let me just quickly take you back to the traceability right now. So, one of the biggest challenges in marine ingredients is traceability. Because unlike farmed shrimp or farmed salmon, where the origin is a specific farm, fish meal come from dozens of fishing vessels, multiple landing sites, seasonal fisheries, and also uh, sometimes like we get landings with the mixed species, right? So that means one batch of fish meal might represent hundreds of tons of fish landed across many locations. Right? So why is traceability so complex in marine ingredient supply chains?
Well, you've just explained why, because it might come from a variety of sources, but our standard is built on a segregated model. So if those species combined come from individual fisheries that have been approved, so if all of those species are approved, and if you looked on our website at certificate holders, so you can click on someone's certificate and it will list those species that are approved. So for some countries, that's a significant number of species. For somewhere like Peru, where they're only dealing with Peruvian anchoveta, there's just Peruvian anchoveta listed. So if it's a part of the world where they're relying on a number of species, every single one of those, if they're whole fish, will have to be approved. If it's byproduct because the fish is landed and then processed for human consumption, then we have a risk-based approach that we take, that the independent assessor will take. And again, those byproduct will then have to be approved before they can be used in the marine ingredients. The traceability system is to ensure that we have the vessel, details about the vessel, the IMO number, the flag, details on the catch, on the fishing gear, on the species that were caught. So it's not impossible, but it can be quite complex. And if there's any doubt, if there are other species mixed in them that aren't approved, then none of that batch can be used for what would be Marine Trust certified raw material, because as I said, we operate purely on a segregation model. Makes it very easy in countries like Peru and far more complex in other countries. But this is where us using the framework of the Global Dialogue for Seafood Traceability has been, a really positive thing, because it's making sure that everybody in that chain is collecting the same data, so that you can follow that batch and you have that same data all through the production, as it leaves the Marine Trust certified factories, it goes into our chain of custody, and as it gets to the feed producer, those key data elements will follow that batch.
Right. So again, we will come back on GDST later in the podcast. What are the biggest transparency gaps when it comes to traceability? Where do you feel that we may feel a sense of difficulty while collecting some of the key data elements across the supply chain?
I don't think the key data elements are hard. The key data elements, so we worked with the Global Dialogue for Seafood Traceability. We actually ran some pilots in 2019, 2020 to look at how far, how developed the industry was in terms of this information, and actually getting the industry to agree, and that whole value chain, what are the key data elements we need, and also where are the critical tracking events, where do we need to mark a critical tracking event and make in the world. It's very broad, so you will get people that might be highly sophisticated, everything's digitally done, and they'll get people within that chain that are writing things down on a piece of paper. At this stage, that doesn't matter. What matters the most is that everybody is collecting the same data, whether they're writing it on a piece of paper or putting it in a computer. And the idea is as we push the bar for continuous improvement and move into future versions of our standard, then we can be used as a framework potentially for those interoperable digital systems. So it's ensuring that we're bringing everybody along with us and they understand why they need to produce that data. So it just becomes the norm. People aren't going, why have I got to, why do you need to know the name of the boat and the IMO number? They're like, oh yeah, with this batch, I need to provide all of this information. Again, things like the Improver program are a way of where that type of data might, we're often starting with fisheries where there's no data collection, and it's about working with the stakeholders in the Improver program, but also governments to enact data collection systems and things that will make it easier for the industry to be able to provide this data in the same consistent way. So the other thing I'd say we have in the standard as well is that we do have mass balance as part of the standard. So again, it's making sure what goes in matches what comes out. Again, closing down any potential avenues where RUU fish might be added to a batch. So there are other checks and measures around the traceability. It's not all about key data elements. It's about trying to maintain the integrity of each batch and make sure that it is what people say it is.
Absolutely. It's also about a journey. It's not something that we just, adhere to the standards and we say that, okay, now we are traceable. It's a journey where all the actors are responsibly participating and making the supply chain robust.
Yeah, you're right. And what we need people along that supply chain. So we need feed producers, not just to say, okay, I'll only buy Maritas certified raw material. We need them to say, okay, if I'm buying, because like lots of seafood chains, there's lots of people in between. It's not just a simple, marine ingredient factory to feed producer. They're often traders, brokers. There's transport, further processing in between. So it might pass through through several hands before it gets to the feed producer. We need the feed producer to say, okay, I'll only buy from you if you have Maritas chain of custody, because we need that traceability chain and that integrity to be maintained when it leaves the marine ingredient producing factory. Between that and the feed producer, if that chain is broken, then it shouldn't be, you can't say it's Maritas certified material. And that's where the chain of custody again is really important, because it ensures that traceability and it protects the integrity of the product.
Absolutely. And I feel that Marine Trust sits at the center of fisheries and aquaculture.
Yes.
And it focuses on marine ingredient production facilities, fish meal and fish oil factories. And the goal is to ensure that the raw materials used in these factories come from responsibly managed fisheries. Right?
Correct.
So this is where I feel that Marine Trust plays a very, very critical role. So on this part, Libby, I also want you to tell us, in detail about why Marine Trust was created, and when was it created? I know that you have just touched base upon, when was it created. So just give us a brief history about yourself and what gaps does Marine Trust intended to address in the marine ingredient supply chain?
So I think the difference between us and some of the other sort of global third-party standards is that we weren't set up to WWF. We weren't, it wasn't NGOs saying, right, you've got to do this. It was actually industry saying, well, I need to be able to prove that I'm not using illegally sourced raw material in the production of my marine ingredients. How can we do this? And we came about through the membership organization IFO. It was their members, their producing members, that said, how can we do this? and the idea for a standard came about. But to be credible and also to make sure that your standard is market facing, you can't just do it yourself. So you need to make sure that you take a multi-stakeholder approach with that. So, from day one, when the first technical committee at Marine Trust was first set up, it involved NGOs, it involved other people within the value chain. So we have something called a governing body committee that oversees the direction of our standard. And that isn't just marine ingredient producers, it's feed producers, it's processors, NGOs, scientists, retailers. So we may, in the development of a standard, the market might say, oh, I need the bar to be this high, but there might be something that they want included that actually you can't practically do in a factory. It just doesn't work. So it's about looking at sort of that. We always say we're on a bit of a seesaw. So it's that balance between credibility versus accessibility. So we want the standard to be credible, and we want to keep nudging that bar higher and higher, but we need to make sure we're bringing the industry along with us so it is accessible. And new things come in all the time. So we need to be constantly market facing. So where we have, in the first standard, we didn't really cover the very first standard. It was very much about traceability and responsible sourcing. And the production side was very much focused on good manufacturing processes within the factory, making sure that the purity of supply, the safety of the material that was being produced. But subsequent versions, then we have human rights, criteria within that to make sure that everybody in the factory has a legal right to be there, that they have a contract, that they're paid. There's the right to collective bargaining, everything that now becomes, that's expected in markets. And with version 3, our latest version, we've also extended that to vessels supplying whole fish into the marine ingredient value chain, making sure that the people on those vessels, again, have a contract, they have the right to be there. They're there through their own free will. There's no children engaged in any of the steps of the process. So it's gone from saying, right, we need to do something about IUU to saying, right, how do we satisfy the demands of the market? And it's about protecting our reputation, not just providing those assurances, but we see marine ingredients are very easy to oversimplify and say, you're taking fish out of the sea, you're grinding it down to feed other fish when people could be eating those fish. So, the standard helps the industry explain how this isn't actually the case. Many of these species, for example, keep going back to Peruvian anchoveta, are, they're not consumed just in tiny quantities by humans. You need to look at everything on a sort of regional and cultural basis. So hundreds of thousands upon thousands of people are employed in the marine ingredient sector in Peru because they work in factories, they work in all the subsidiaries around that, and you get the multiplier effect of, because people work in factories, they spend money in the communities. If you say, well, you can't do that anymore, you've now all got to eat this, the world's biggest fisheries worth of anchoveta, it wouldn't happen. So it's about making sure we can keep providing those assurances and say, this is what we do. We're a standard that belongs to, we're ISEAL compliant. So ISEAL is a global recognition of sort of top sustainability standards. It's almost like a standard of standards. So we can say, yes, we are credible, but I think we also have to be clear that, we never say we're going to solve all the problems in the world. A standard program, we're just sort of one tool in the box of improvement. So, you're audited once a year, and we're not going to say that we're completely curing all overfishing globally, but we are one route for the marine ingredient sector to provide those assurances and have credible evidence that they are doing a good job.
Absolutely. I feel, amidst these sustainability challenges and rising expectations of the market, sustainability and traceability are the core pillars of success, right? And it's also a very tough environment for everybody, where a difficult question comes before us, that how, as an industry, do we navigate these problems together, by coming together, by solving the most complex problems, right? And it brings a sense of responsibility, isn't it? So, of course, responsibility and how much do we want to be a part of that journey,
Mm.
it matters, so
Yeah, and you're right. It's such a big thing. It has to be done in collaboration. So, we as an industry, we need to understand why the market needs these assurances, but the market needs to understand fully how our industry works and what's realistic. And, what we don't want is we don't want any greenwashing. We need to be credible. And I think when you look at, the seafood sector has been attacked for so long that the bar's really high. And when you look at certifications in other sectors, Marin Trust certifies almost 50% of all marine ingredients produced globally are Marin Trust certified. That's way above any other ingredients. Other ingredients might be, 5, 10, 20%, because they haven't been subjected to the same scrutiny for some reason. And okay, you could say they're playing a game of catch up, but I don't know if they'll catch us, because we obviously we can't stop. It's all about continuous improvement. So we will keep going. There'll be other things that might come up and people say, okay, right, we need this in the next version of the standard. So it's making sure that we are fit for purpose. We have a good value proposition that makes people want to come and do the standard, but that the market accepts what we are doing and sees that as a credible tick in the box, so to speak.
absolutely, absolutely. It all boils down to one thing: how eagerly we want to play an important role towards contributing responsibly to meeting the food safety requirements of our country, of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And helping meet those nutritional requirements of a growing population, but doing it in a way, I think we need to be clear, all food production systems have a cost. But it's about mitigating
Yeah,
those costs and the impacts as much as we can, because ultimately people do need to eat and we can't get away from that. So, and I think there's been this tendency, particularly in marine in aquafeed sector, to say get rid of marine ingredients, right? Let's put soy in, let's do this. But fish do eat fish. They need to eat fish. They need fish in their diet. Or shrimp need to eat marine ingredients. So it's a bit narrow-minded to think, right, get rid of that and we'll put something else in, because from a welfare perspective for shrimp and fish, if they're eating things that they wouldn't normally eat, potentially, it's not great for them. It's not great for their welfare, but also the impacts are huge. And I'll go back to this University of Stirling paper where, the difference when we've seen a reduction. So it was actually looking at European aquaculture, which has doubled in the last sort of 10 15 years, but the volume of marine ingredients used has gone down by 13%. So we're using less marine ingredients, but
yeah,
the impacts by using those substitutes are significant. So we need to think about those consequences, saying get rid of that and look at it more holistically. We need all the ingredients, because, as you said at the beginning, we only have a finite volume of marine ingredients produced globally. So we need to maximize everything we do with those. And we do need other ingredients in aquafeed, but we need to work collaboratively, which it happens a lot now. And it's saying, right, how can we all be part of this solution to find, adequate to effectively feed a growing population? How can we work together to produce the best aquafeed?
absolutely. And every ingredient, I think, has its own role. But how much to use also is the question, and for which everybody is working together, right? And
Yeah.
sustainability also is not about replacing one with another. It's about using the right mix in the right measure and for the right purpose.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Great, great, great. So, Libby, let's talk about India. Okay.
Hmm.
So, India is one of the major producers of marine ingredients globally. I was just, going through the data. I found out that India is the third largest producer of marine ingredients. Globally, we produce 5 lakh metric tons of fish oil, fish meal, and
Hmm.
India's share is about 10%, combining fish meal and fish oil. right? And we have roughly 68 fish meal and fish oil manufacturing facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if I talk about exports, of course, India exports roughly over 95% of the shrimp we produce, right? Mainly to
Yes.
countries like US, Europe, Japan, China, right? So which means again, traceability in feed ingredients has become extremely important for
Mm-hmm.
food compliance, right? So
Yes.
how important is India in the global marine ingredient ecosystem?
You've said with the statistics. I mean, India is massively important, and I think the interest is growing in India even more so as aquaculture grows globally, but also the need for assured marine ingredients it increases globally. So there's a lot of potential within India that needs to be realised, but obviously it's a slightly longer journey in terms of fisheries management, and this is where the Improver program has the Marine Trust Improver program is established in India, and we currently have a fisheries improvement program in Goa, Maharashtra, and Karnataka State. And there's discussions of hopefully more joining, coming into our Improver program as the market is demanding these ingredients, but also I think, sometimes when you're the first improver programs in a country, and I mean, India is a big country, so we've just had improver programs complete in Panama and Ecuador, where they were the only improver program. It takes a lot of effort at the beginning, even before getting over the start line, for industry to get together and agree and collaborate, for good coordination, but also for the government to understand their part in this. So it's really powerful if industry can go to government and say, look, we really need this. We want to export, or we want to provide assured marine ingredients into our own shrimp sector, because that's it being exported, and that's what the market is demanding, that the feed that's fed to the shrimp is coming from assured sources like Marine Trust. But these aren't quick fix things. So if you need governments, whether that's regional or national, to perhaps enact fisheries management or legislation, or credible systems of data collection. All these things take time. These are big institutional changes, and they can't be done as an overnight fix. So the potential in India is massive, and we've seen some, the FIPs within India have been amazing in how they've grown. And I will say, so as part of our Improver program, because our unit certification is a factory, those factories sourcing from the FIPS in India also have to be audited and pass an audit against the Marine Trust standard. They can then deal with approved raw material going in from the FIP. It's not a certification, so they can't make any claims or use a logo or anything. But the market recognises it. So the main feed producers in the world recognise Improver program material. So again, it's starting to open up India to other opportunities that it wouldn't have had if it had, stayed, if you hadn't joined the Improver program.
Right. When was those FIPs commenced?
So Goa and Maharashtra was 2009, October 2019. And obviously they had to suffer COVID, and then the fact that we've moved over to version 3 of our standard, and the Karnataka State FIP was March 2024.
So Libby, on what basis or on what assessments do marine trusts identify FIPs on? How do you select FIPs basically?
We don't select FIPs. They're voluntary. So anyone in the world, if marine ingredient producers are sourcing from fisheries that can't meet the FAO code of conduct for fisheries, so it precludes them from, it stops them going for certification, they could get together, a multi-stakeholder group, including the fisheries and the marine ingredient producers and potentially NGOs or anyone local that has a local stakeholder that's involved in it. They can form their own FIP looking at specific species and gear type. And And then, it's like an acceptance scheme. So they would have to undertake a gap analysis against our fisheries assessment. They need a fisheries action plan. As stakeholders within that FIP, they'd all need to sign a memorandum of understanding to say that they were collaborating and going to work together. And then they would apply to our Improver Programme Acceptance Committee, which would look at the, their gap analysis, their action plan. This would be looked at by an independent third-party peer reviewer to see whether it was credible or realistic. They might look at it and go, no, that's not going to happen. They might have to do some fine-tuning. They might have to go away and completely rewrite it. And when it reaches a point where the peer reviewer is happy, if it's approved by our Improver Programme Acceptance Committee, that goes through our governance structure up to the governing body committee, and they will have final say whether the applicant can join, is accepted and can join our Improver Programme. And that's sort of then, they then start that process. If they're accepted, then each year there will have to be an assessment, a peer-reviewed assessment, to make sure that they are meeting the milestones they said they will meet. So anybody could form one, but provided you meet those criteria.
Right. And who all are those stakeholders from India who are a part of FIP?
Yeah, so Goa and Maharashtra were first. They were led by some of the marine ingredient producers there. They got together and they've heard about our program. Our program also operates, as I said, we had one in Panama and Ecuador that have now completed. We also have them in Vietnam, Oman, and Thailand. We also have one in the Northeast Atlantic, slightly different, but we also have an Improver Programme there. So they knew about our program. They were interested. We explained about our program. We own the program, so we can't be, there'd be a conflict of interest if we were involved in holding people's hand and helping them set up. It has to come from them, and then they have to meet the criteria for acceptance before they can start formally on the program and be announced. So, at any one time, we might have people that are applying for acceptance, but they might submit a fisheries action plan that isn't robust enough, or they need to go away and do some more work on it, or do another completely different fisheries action plan, or they haven't done the gap analysis. So just getting to that point takes a lot of effort. And I think the crux of that, the absolute key, is good project management and collaboration. And wherever we've seen FIPs, doing well in the world, it's often down to that one coordinator who has the ability to bring everybody together and keep things moving, because it is a long process. And, often your stakeholders are busy doing other things, like running their businesses, but you need that one person who can bring it all together and keep it going and understands what needs to be done and why.
Right. And how is it going? How is it going specifically about the FIP, which started in 2019? It's been how many years? 7 years. It's been like...
It is. So initially we say when you enter the FIP, it's a 5-year program. But the reality is, when you're looking at trying to get changes in government and collect data, that 5 years is unrealistic. And then there'll be things happen. So with the Goa one, obviously we had COVID. So that stopped quite a lot in terms of peer reviews and people being able to go out in the field and do work. We've then transitioned on to version 3 of our standards. So they will have originally done theirs against version 2.1 of our standard. So that the idea of the Improver Programme Application Committee, each year when you're peer reviewed, it might be that as part of that you say, okay, we've met these milestones, but these ones we haven't been able to meet because of something that's very valid. So if we said it's a 5-year program, no one will get to the end of it. The market needs to be realistic that to enact these changes. And we saw in Panama, they actually, the industry got the government to enact new fisheries legislation because they wouldn't have been able to keep moving through the FIP if this hadn't happened. You can't do that in a year. It often takes longer. So they're doing well. Their current end date is 2028. The Karnataka one has come in and been able to go, look at version 3 of our standard. They're bigger now because they have more marine ingredient producers within the FIP that have now been audited and passed that audit. So at the moment, I think we have 5 factories in Karnataka that are have been accepted as Mauritius part of the Improver program, so they can sell their product as Improver program material, not using a logo. It's not certified, but it's recognized as Improver program material that the market wants and demands. And we have two in Goa and Maharashtra. And there's been so much interest in India. I expect we will see other FIPs in other regions sometime soon.
Right, right. So you were saying that the challenges in operating a FIP, either in India or anywhere else in the world, remains the same.
It's no different in India than anywhere else in the world. And I think it's, first of all, getting everybody together, getting people, the stakeholders to understand why this is a good thing, and then persuading governments. And that often takes the longest. So I was thinking somewhere else, I forgot to say, we have a FIP in Mauritania. So again, the government just had very limited resources, expertise. There were loads of things around data collection and fisheries management enforcement that they just weren't doing. So the industry has been able to push government towards that, and it's great when you see there's often like this sudden turning point. We've seen it in Thailand, Panama, we've seen it in lots of different countries where suddenly you get industry and the stakeholders all working together because they understand why they need to do these things. And it's great. And I think, I always tell people, when I present to people around the world, particularly when it's feed producers or retailers or people further along in the value chain, say getting to the start line is an amazing thing for FIPs to do. That is because it's tough, and we have a really robust system, and so you really have to not just get everybody together, but you have to make sure you have a robust fisheries action plan, make sure that the gap analysis is good and thorough and robust. So it's not, I think there was a time when people thought, if everyone goes into a FIP, it's greenwashing, but it's just not the case. I can say hand on heart, we have a really robust system. It's hard to get into and keep maintaining that momentum, and the crux of that is down to in every country where we have a FIP, I can think of, the coordinator is the person that is just amazing. They are just keeping everything going and helping drive that change. And that's absolutely fundamental. I will say as well that our FIPs are rated by the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership as well. So that rating gives it some credibility in terms of, when we're speaking to people globally, we have a robust system, but it always helps to have that that little sort of badge of approval from someone like the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership that's so well respected globally.
Right. And how long do you think that these FIPs will take to complete?
Well, we have 2028 for Goa, Maharashtra, and Karnataka is 2029. You never know, there might be some, who knows, there might be some other obstacle that means they can't quite make that. I'm sure they will complete, but sometimes it takes a bit longer because there might be something unforeseen. For example, we didn't know that COVID was going to hit, in 5-6 years ago. So there are sometimes things that are completely out of people's control. But the good thing is that the market does recognise. So feed producers will have in their sourcing policies for marine ingredients, they will have Mauritius certified material, but they will also have Improver program accepted material. So that has to come from an accepted factory that has passed the audit as well. And from that, again, same things apply. That raw material has to be kept segregated from any non-Improver program material. That material is recognised within our chain of custody. So it means that the feed producers can get those assurances that it is credible, really is Improver program material that's coming into their factories.
When I was working with a certification body way back in 2015, it was at a very infancy stage because people were not aware about it, and also market was not ready. Right now, as you said, that market is ready. Our governments are active. There are feed standards coming
Yes.
up. For example, ASC
Mm-hmm.
standard had just come for the feed. and also the environment that has changed completely in the global world, right? So I think right now everybody is on the same track
Yes.
at
Yeah.
how we do it responsibly,
Hmm.
collectively. So yes,
Yeah, I think the timing is right. And you've mentioned the ASC feed standard. There's also the BAP have a feed standard and global gap, and those three feed standards all stipulate Marin Trust certified material, or they recognise improver program material. So again, that's another great driver for this change. And you spoke about us being, between fisheries and aquaculture, and we are. We always say we bridge that gap. So we're supplying, or we're helping marine ingredient producers feed into either those feed standards, but also those aquaculture standards that Global Gap, BAP, and ASC have, where again the feed needs to come from sources that are responsible, such as Marin Trust or the Marin Trust Improver Program.
absolutely. I think the emergence of feed standards are reshaping the marine ingredient industry globally, along with the retailers' commitment for ethical sourcing by
Yes.
20. Right. So, Libby, how much certified fish meal is produced in India from your improver programs?
Well, none of it's certified because it's improver program. So improver program material is not certified, but it's recognized by the market as being from our improver program. And I'm afraid I couldn't tell you the exact volume because we've just had, more factories come to the point where they're now accepted, and we'd have to have the data from those specific factories. But at the moment, as you said, there are 68 factories. We now have 7, and that's likely to grow. So what we do need is, if India wants to meet its potential, then we're hopeful that other improver programs will come on board within different regions of India that are sourcing raw material that's going into the marine ingredient sector.
In India, we have around 68 fish meal and fish oil
Hmm.
factories.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how do we bring them all in?
Well, it's happening because in the Karnataka FIP, I think there are only 2 or 3, and we've suddenly seen 3 more join in the past their audit in the last few months. So I think as people understand how the FIP works and what it does and what the market benefits are, I think the momentum is growing. And as I said, there are other, we've had inquiries from other regions where people are interested in how they would develop a FIP. So I think, it's still quite early days. I think we will see this grow when people start to understand it. We've got, greater interest and commitment from government, which always helps. The market being committed, things like the various feed standards, saying, I really need this product. We're seeing in some Northern European fisheries, pelagic fisheries, they're not doing so well at the moment. So the global stage is looking to India. So I think all the things are aligned now for this to increase. And if we have this conversation, next year and the year after, I'm sure there'll be greater numbers of factories that are accepted. And who knows, there could even be, other FIPs as well.
So my question is, how do you validate the raw material in that indeed comes from the FIP to the factory that is applying for Marine Trust Improver program?
Hmm. So I don't, obviously. It will be during the audit that's undertaken by the independent third party certification body. They will go into a factory and they'll do the same audit as they would whether it was improve a program raw material going in, or approved fisheries in where they're above the improver program standard. So they will do the same checks and measures in terms of traceability, in terms of key data elements, in terms of mass balance. It's no different. The only difference is that raw material is improver program accepted as opposed to approved raw material.
Okay.
And it's the same with our chain of custody. So the chain of custody also covers improver program accepted material, not just Marin Trust certified material. So again, but it's no different in terms of what they'll be looking at, the KDEs, everything is the same.
Okay. So basically, marine trust ensures that the raw materials that comes from FIPS and then enters into the supply chain is fully traceable through the factory standard, and
Correct.
it is same as what you would do if the raw material is coming from a completed FIP.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So for example, now in the factories in Ecuador's that just completed our improver program, they will be having the same audit, those factories, as they had when they were in the improver program. The difference being that the raw material coming in is now approved, and the raw material going out can now be classed as certified, not just improver program accepted.
And does this audit also ensures that the factory has effective controls in place for segregation, accurate mass balance,
Correct.
legal
Yes. Yes.
compliance, and operational integrity? Could you
Yeah, so they do a
elaborate?
mass balance exercise. They'll be looking at all the yeah, so what's coming in, what's going out, making sure that products segregated, looking at all the record keeping, observing the whole process. So it's just as thorough as it would be for a full certification.
Okay, all right, great. So, given that two marine trust aligned FIPs are operating currently in India, and they are projected to be completed by 2029. Factories can receive Marine Trust Improver Program approval during the fifth period, right?
If they
And
pass an audit, yeah, they could apply for an audit.
yeah,
If they pass that audit, then they would be an accepted factory. Yes.
and they need not to be waiting until the FIP is completed.
No,
Uh,
no.
right. Okay. And the facility, like you said, right, that once the FIP is completed, the facility must go through the full application process. So,
Yes, it will apply as if it's a new applicant to the certification process. Yes.
and then it needs to be audited again by an independent third party.
Yes. So the certification body will undertake, it's a 3-year cycle, so full audit and then 2 surveillance audits. So when they then join once they've got approved raw material, the FIP's complete, they will have to be fully audited again by the independent auditor from the certification body. And if they pass, then they will be issued with a certificate saying they are Marin Trust certified.
Mm.
But the
And
improver program, because the market recognizes it, it's a great opportunity for factories now to gain that recognition, and be able to satisfy the market needs for improver program accepted material.
right. So right now, I mean, do you have some tentative data as to how much these seven factories are able to produce?
No, because as I've said, they will inevitably, they won't just be getting stuff from, say, um, the Carnetica small pelagic purseine fishery. They'll be getting it from other, as long as they've got segregation. So, even when someone's fully certified, they may get product that isn't approved, but they'll segregate it. So their overall production volume might not be everything is either improved program or Mine Trust certified. It just depends on what they're doing. So we know it's like IFO get production data from their members, we get production data from our certificate holders or improver program, but it's quite it's not exact. It's quite
How do you evaluate, Libby? How do you evaluate how
we
much the current FIPS can produce? And
mhm,
if we want to certify the available fish meal
mhm.
production available right now in India,
Yeah.
how much are we looking at? Based on that, we will have a vision, right?
Well, it's going to depend what the market wants, because, for example, you could be sending a load of stuff into China and they're not going to ask for anything. So they might send stuff that's not from the improver program. It's such a global thing and markets need different things. So for us, I think what would look good is more volumes, those more volumes. So the other thing we can't do is we can only amalgamate volumes in some countries, because if you've got, say, two in Goa, you can't we can't share data. We can amalgamate data and say, okay, we've got this much from India, which we'll do in the autumn. We always do our annual survey. But if we only had one factory in India, we wouldn't be able to say India produces this much certified material because then people would know it's that factory. So through data protection, we're not allowed to do that. We often have to amalgamate and have more than X number of factories, so people can't identify that data down to one.
So, Libby, today retailers and seafood buyers are sending very clear signals. They want proof that seafood supply chains are environmentally responsible, socially accountable, and fully traceable. What are the biggest market signals Marine Trust is seeing from global seafood buyers?
Well, we've seen the growth in aquaculture, and also when you look at the FAO stats on what can be produced from wild capture fisheries versus aquaculture, and also how we feed a growing global population with nutritionally robust food effectively, then aquaculture is one of the big solutions. And we found, we're contacted by feed producers all over the world that want the volume of, greater volumes of Maritime Trust certified raw material or improver program material. So they realize that, some of those big fisheries, the big pelagic fisheries that are already approved and going into certified factories are, they're at their limit. There isn't any more. And the next best solution is to find improver programs or set up improver programs so that there can be greater volumes of raw material. So going into factories to produce certified or in the initial stages improver program accepted raw material into the value chains. So the appetite is there, and I also think it's their willingness to appreciate that improver programs do take time. They're not a quick overnight fix, and they need big changes. But if the industry and that whole value chain is going to be responsible in how it acts, then it needs to be part of the solution. And part of that solution is improver programs to improve fisheries.
Right. And how much do you think that the current PIPs which are running and the 7 factories that are Marine Trust Improver Program approved, how much volumes they must be supplying to the feed mills? Do we have any?
Well, there's still I can't tell you the exact volumes because I don't have that data. And as you've said before, you have 68 fish meal and fish oil factories in India, and so far only 7 of those are improver program accepted, so they're able to sell their accepted material in the value chain as that. But we're seeing growth. Often with improver programs, it takes so long to get it started and for people to understand why. It took a long time in terms of going Maharashtra, but with Karnataka, we've seen quite quick progress, and it's jumped just in the last few months from 2 accepted facilities to 7. We're likely to see more. So I think once people understand what it does and why, there's no reason why India can't start to, realize more of its potential. You have so much high quality fish meal and fish oil that I say the world wants it, but also with your shrimp sector, it's significant for domestic feed as well that's used in the domestic sector, particularly as a lot of that shrimp is being exported, and it's being exported into markets where they expect as a minimum assurances around traceability, responsible sourcing and responsible production. So there's a great opportunity for India that's only really just starting to be realized. A lot of hard work has been done to reach that point, and I think I'm hoping that we will see new improver programs joining our the Maritime Trust program, and perhaps in slightly different geographical areas, but also the number of stakeholders within those improver programs increasing, so you increase the number of accepted factories.
So you mean to say that right now we have like 7 factories were approved, and in order to reach the massive numbers that we have currently in India, which are 60 factories right now, we would need to enroll more FIPs. We need to have more FIPs coming into practice if we want to extend to those numbers?
Well, a bit of both. So yes, there are regions that aren't covered by and perhaps fisheries and gear types that aren't covered by the improver programs at the moment. So there's scope for more improver programs. And we've seen in India, I think there's been talk about an all India model, but I think because it's fragmented and you have regional and national management on things, that we've seen these smaller regional models work quite well. So I could envisage further FIPs in regions that aren't covered by these, but also within the existing FIPs. So FIPs have to be, they have to, when they sign up to our program, they have to be open to collaboration. So I think some factories probably didn't see the benefits of being in the FIP because they probably didn't understand why or what it was about. And now they're seeing this, particularly we've seen this in Karnataka, where factories that weren't involved in the original FIP have now signed up to be stakeholders. They're part of the memorandum of understanding, and they've been able to get audits, and they've been successful in passing these audits. So they have become Marine Trust Improvement Programme accepted factories. So there's no reason to say that more could join in either Goa, Maharashtra, or in Karnataka, or that we'll also see new FIPs coming into existence in India. Yeah, and I think you've had two states with successful FIPs. It makes it easier then for it to succeed potentially in another state if they can see it succeeding somewhere else. And probably what you don't want is, if you have, for example, Indian feed producers and they want to go for one of their third-party feed standards, for example, ASC, then what you don't want is them being forced to import certified marine ingredients or improver program accepted marine ingredients, because they need to do that to satisfy the conditions of the feed standard that they're going for, when there's potential, you have to explain this massive potential in India to be able to provide them with the raw material they need, provided they're in the improver program at the very least. So there's a huge opportunity, and like I said, with the commitment of Indian government to digital traceability, I think it's really good timing in India. But people are starting to understand these things, and then we found in countries is they then just become the norm. People expect it as a minimum, that they expect traceability, they expect responsible sourcing, they expect people to be looked after in those chains, that the workers to have rights and no exploitation. So it is that constant shifting of the bar, like it is for us, it's been through a standard, but you can't do it in isolation. You still need governments to be involved. You need some activism. You need NGOs to be holding everybody to account. So I think the timing is really good in India for this to grow.
Absolutely, and we look forward to having a more robust collaboration with Marine Trust in the times to come. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So, Libby, very interesting fact is that one of the biggest transformations in the marine ingredient industry is the rise of byproducts.
Yes.
Historically, most fish meal came from whole fish. But today the industry is rapidly shifting toward circular economy models.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please throw some light on the statistics?
Yeah, so you're right. So originally marine ingredients were coming almost exclusively from those whole fish forage fisheries, but we're now seeing a shift where probably about a third in total. If you combine fish meal and fish oil, probably a third now is coming from byproducts, and we're seeing that volume increase as people are looking to better utilize the raw material. So in the past, you might have had a factory where fish was landed for human consumption, filleting the fish, and it was seen as waste, and it was maybe put in a bin and may eventually find its way to the fish meal factory, but not in any hurry. And now it's seen as something a more valuable product. So we're seeing, particularly in mixed fisheries, we're seeing an increase in that volume globally. Byproduct isn't currently included in our improver program, but that's not to say it won't be in the future. But we see, particularly in, say, Northern Europe, where there's quite a lot of mixed fisheries and a lot of fisheries for human consumption, where those volumes are increasing that are going into the value chain. And we have examples where we've seen integrated factories. I can speak of one in the UK where they own vessels, they own their own whitefish processing and pelagic processing, and they've built a fish meal plant a few years ago. So all the offcuts and trimmings that are coming from they're both processing of pelagic fish and whitefish going to their fish meal plant for the production of fish meal and fish oil. That's going locally to a feed producer, and that feed is then being used to feed salmon that are grown this is in Scotland in the UK. So you've got a brilliant circular economy story where nothing is wasted. And I think as processors for human consumption understand the value in that product, they're starting to handle it better, and they're also providing the information they would with something for the human consumption fishery. So if their fillets are going into a retailer, they will provide all the traceability information, whereas in the past the trimmings, they would have just put that in a bin and it would have gone off as a mixed load to a marine ingredient producer. But now they're seeing that value, so that information is going with the product. We've also looked at, in our current version of the standard, version 3, we looked at this accessibility issue, and we were finding what we did in version 2 was that so every single byproduct species that was going into a factory had to have a full fisheries assessment, and it was making it really cumbersome. It was making it very expensive. It was taking a long time. This is product that's been landed to human consumption fisheries, so you have all your checks and balances there. So we've actually gone down a risk-based model where we look at things like the IUU index. We look at the flag state that caught it, and we have a risk register that we've built using these normative documents and various sort of internationally recognized registers, and each country has a scoring, and depending on whether it's a red flag, amber or green, it decides whether the amount of the work the fisheries assessors will have to do in looking at this source of supply, or whether if it's green, whether it can be approved byproduct without a lot of extra work being done. So it's about trying to free up that side of marine ingredients, and we've seen a massive growth, particularly in things like tuna. Tuna, huge fisheries globally. A lot of oil is coming from tuna. So we have quite a few certifications now where the only product they're dealing with that's approved is tuna byproduct. So there's a lot of potential. Again, India will be a great place. A lot of potential there to fully maximize everything that's being landed and making sure that nothing at all is wasted.
Absolutely. And when I'm looking at the data, Libby, previously about 78% of fish meal used to come from whole fish. Now, as per the data that you provided me, it says that 36% of fish meal now comes from byproducts,
yes.
and 3% of fish oil comes from processing waste. Wow.
Yes.
This creates a lot of opportunity for a circular economy.
It does, and I think in some places as well, geographically, there just isn't the infrastructure to deal with that byproduct. Particularly, say, tuna fisheries on islands in the Pacific, they might not have a way of dealing with that product. So there's another huge opportunity. We always say the volume of marine ingredients produced is finite, but if we're utilizing everything, that finite resource, the total number could be higher than it is now if we're fully utilizing every byproduct that is potentially available.
Absolutely. So what are the challenges that you foresee coming on the way while we expand byproducts?
I think it's very easy for people to say that we've seen some retailers that might say and pet food manufacturers will go, we're only want to deal with byproduct, we're because it's the most circular and it's the most environmentally friendly and less impact and lower carbon footprint. But we need to be careful, because there need to be the checks and balances in place to make sure that is not IUU product. But also we have very well managed whole fish fisheries, and we still need these whole fish fisheries. So to say I will only take from byproduct, it's quite a easy answer to say we're being really green. I think it goes back to, I think sometimes people like to oversimplify fisheries because they're complex, but in an ideal where people would be taking a mix. So, when you think of you've got very well managed fisheries like the Peruvian anchoveta, well, if you're only going to take byproduct and not that, it would seem a bit of a crazy thing to do. And also you need both because you need the volumes. So I think byproduct is a really good thing. We've made it more accessible. It's made a huge difference as we're seeing the volumes grow and then the number of species that are approved grow. But that's not going to be at the cost of well-managed whole fish fisheries.
Right, right. And in the last discussion, Libby, you also said that marine trust is focused on other marine ingredients like fish hydrolysates. So what is
Yes.
that? Looks very interesting.
Well, so I think marine ingredients has been sort of quite simplified of it being just fish meal and fish oil, but there's other bits that come from that as well. And I think where we've seen innovative companies is saying, okay, again, I need to maximize everything that I'm getting here. So anything, like the wastewater is then put back into the system. There are opportunities to, not just end up putting fish meal and fish oil in aquafeed. And I think probably where we've seen some of that growth as well is looking at things like the nutraceutical sector, which is demand, competing with the aquafeed sector. So we're seeing a more innovative marine ingredient sector in terms of what they're producing. So it's not just that, bring your fish in, make fish meal and fish oil, go straight to aquafeed. It's becoming much more sophisticated. And when we look at some of the marine ingredient producers globally and the acquisitions, and you look at their portfolios, then it's not just all about marine ingredients, it's about other things as well. So I think, as we move into, move ahead in the future, I think, aquafeed's still going to remain as the backbone of fish meal and fish oil, of marine ingredients. But we're seeing increased interest in pet food. People seem to really care about what they feed their dogs and cats, sometimes more so than their own children. And we're also seeing that nutraceutical market that's very competitive, and it's one we are engaged with to a degree, but the big volumes and the market drivers are still for us aquafeed.
Right. That's very, very interesting. And if I take you back quickly to the market regulations, um,
Mm-hmm.
with the implementation of Food Safety Modernization Act, Section 204, Food Traceability Rule, we need to demonstrate complete seafood supply chain data and records. I mean, it's no longer optional, right?
No,
And
and it's not in lots of countries, no.
yeah, and we know for years the industry has been practicing the strong traceability for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I had a podcast with Kevin. Kevin said that we discussed that right now we have the building blocks available, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yes.
example, Marine Trust has its own platform to capture the data.
Mm-hmm.
ASC
Yep.
standards have their own, like ASC have their own platform to capture the data.
Mm-hmm.
Also the same case with BAP, right? One
Mm-hmm.
of the challenges is that how do we actually structure, digitize, and efficiently share that data in a seamless manner?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's a really good question. Yeah. And I
and
think this
Willing
is
Trust
sorry.
and Willing Trust is the GDST partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my question is that how do you plan to integrate GDST into your own program that you have created, uh, and
Mm-hmm.
and what opportunities exist for like broader interoperability as per you?
Yeah. So GDST, we were a founding member, Maritas was a founding member of GDST, is embedded within our standards, but we see our standard as continuing to provide the framework essentially for systems that can be used for data capture and interoperability. And by enabling our standard to provide that framework, it means it makes it accessible to the industry in terms of this innovation. So we will continue to align ourselves, as I said, and provide that framework. But we can't. I think the risk has been that if people dictate what systems, that you have to have this system or that system, the key is they need to be interoperable. And I think as GDST continues to expand and grow, and also people have got more used to what traceability is. Like I said, when we first did our work with GDST, and then we ran pilots, it was very much looking at going really back to basics, like what is the data that you need? Why does the market need this? Because sometimes the market asks for so much data. They want to know the captain of the fishing vessel's, birthday and what he likes to eat for dinner. They don't need to know that information. It's saying, like, what information do you really need, and what information can we provide? So once you've got that and everybody's quite happily doing it and it becomes the norm, then industry will decide which systems of interoperable systems they want to use. We can't, as a standard, dictate, because it needs to be one that is fit for purpose in their company, provided those systems are interoperable. And I think in the past we'd seen early traceability systems where they were very specific, and so it excluded some people, or it was an expensive piece of software for a company to buy, but you needed to rely on everybody in that value chain buying it. So I think as government pushes the agenda and we have these frameworks within our standard, I think we'll see, that space filled by systems that are interoperable, because that's what the market wants and that's what they're asking for.
Absolutely. And the power of this modern traceability system is that if we are able to connect these building blocks and find out a way to align these in a way that they speak the common language,
Yes.
then I feel that we may not be needing the chain of custody certifications, because, like Kevin said, that it will become so transparent that if you
Mm-hmm.
share the credentials with the buyer, I mean, the buyer will be able to see the entire journey, you know.
Yes, and it will be, but obviously, we're dealing with a global, a product that's used globally. So, in the future, yes, I agree with you. But in the interim, then we're still going to need that verification, so to speak, because not everybody will be at the same point. But the foundations are there, and I think that's really important. Traceability underpins everything we do. The fact that we now have the framework, the GDST framework, is great because everybody's speaking the same language, and that's what we need. We need the right data in and the right data out. And that's where the conversation has gone, and that's what's within our standard. It's that right data that's going in and coming out at the other end as well.
Right. So, Libby, in India's context, where do you see the bottlenecks? Because, of course, this is a beautiful system, but in order to have everyone aligning through this system, um, we have to connect the dots, by working with numerous stakeholders. Right? So,
Mm.
how do you think that how can we overcome all those obstacles and challenges that may act as a barrier to the
Oh,
fast adoption?
that's a good question. And I think it's a bit of push and it's a bit of pull. People need to understand why they are being asked to do something. So, years ago working with fishermen, and they didn't understand why a retailer was asking for something particular. But when you bring the retailer to the fisherman, and the retailer can say, well, actually, I really need this, this information because I need to provide assurances for my customer, and the fisherman can go, oh, this is how we can do it, then that's when things work. So I think there's an educational piece that's both a government level and an industry level. And it's difficult because you always have a lot of internal politics, and it's made harder in India, obviously, with with the state versus the government, and things are often fragmented. But if you can get those early adopters and use them as case studies, you get people that are working this, or you get the market saying, well, I will only accept your product if you use this, you're providing this data using this system. You need all these little things to try and help change mindsets. And you want, you want people on board. You want them to understand why they need to do it and the benefits of them doing it, because otherwise they'll oppose you and they won't understand. If they don't understand or they think it's, it's threatening, then they're not going to want to play. So it's about trying to change hearts and minds as to why this is good. And if you're producing a good product in India, you want to protect the integrity of that. And if that means using a specific traceability system that's going to protect the integrity of your product, then sometimes we find about fishermen, they're really proud of what they're doing and what they're landing and what they're catching. We see that in processing factories, definitely see it in the marine ingredient sector, where people are very proud of what they produce. So it's about convincing them that we can maintain your product, and the people that aren't doing it, the bad guys, you're going to be able to differentiate in the marketplace because you are doing this system.
Absolutely. And following this, I have a very interesting question for you. That feed transparency is becoming an increasingly important expectation, right?
Yes.
From the markets, from the global buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And if we together were to accelerate transparency in feed supply chains specifically,
Mm-hmm.
uh, how do you feel that how can we do that through pilots where responsible feed mills, in context with India, I'm saying, openly disclose marine ingredient sources? How do you feel that how might such a pilot look in practice, and
Well,
what
you do.
collaboration would be required between fisheries, ingredient manufacturers, feed mills, shrimp exporters, and also retailers?
Mm. You get transparency amongst many of the feed producers anyway. I mean, if you look at some of the big feed producers like Skretting and Biomar and Cargill, they will list all of their sources of marine ingredients, and they will list the percentage that is Marin Trust certified or other, or comes from an improver program. So I think that transparency is already there, and the market expects that. So they will publish that information in their annual report because their investors will want to see that information, but also the aquaculture companies that are sourcing from them want to see that information, but also the retailers and food service sector. Plus, it always helps them reputationally. If you're being transparent, you're saying that I have got nothing to hide. So I don't see why that would be a problem when we see it happening with feed producers around the world anyway. And then in terms of that traceability, if the feed producers are buying from uh, either Marin Trust certified factories or via an approved factory in the Improver program, then you have those assurances anyway around traceability. So I don't think you need to run a pilot. You are in a way. It's called the Improver program. You've got your Improver program accepted species going into an accepted factory, going up to a feed producer, and they potentially going along a chain of custody that also covers improver program material. So it's there. You don't need to run a pilot because it's already happening.
So, if I were to change my question and rephrase it like this, that if doing a pilot with responsible feed companies who are already showing transparency of the feed ingredients in their annual reports, if we were to do a pilot in showing traceability, aligning GDST standards, where we
Mm-hmm.
have the technology providers, okay,
Mm.
have certification bodies, we have retailers, we have feed mills, we have a government of India,
Mm-hmm.
we have the exporters, right? And we also have marine ingredient suppliers. So
Mm-hmm.
we were to do a pilot enrolling all these stakeholders and show that, okay, we are GDST compliant. What is
Yes.
your opinion about that?
I'm not sure whether it's a pilot or a case study, because you could, for example, if the feed producer is certified to a third party feed standard like BAP feed standard or ASC, they will have had to have done all of that anyway. They will have to show that a percentage of their feed is coming from certified sources or improver program sources, and you could, the trace back is there. So maybe instead of doing a pilot, maybe it's to have a case study of what's actually happening. So you could do one through the FIPS in the FIPS in India, and then look at where that product is going. So, for example, if I think Avanti Feeds is part of or both improver programs, you might be able to do something with them there to show why it works. Because I think what that would then do as well is that might encourage the other people in India who are talking about setting up FIPS actually doing something if you can demonstrate that it's actually working already.
Right. So we can create a story around that.
Yeah, because it's like at the beginning you said about the farmer thinks the shrimp farming is just about his pond or his or her pond, but the reality is it's much more, and it is much more. And I think it shows how important India is. It's all the steps in it. It's not that you don't necessarily have to import feed. You could be catching your own feed effectively, manufacturing your own feed, growing your own shrimp fed on that feed, and you've got an amazing story. India has an amazing story, and you're only just at the start of that story. There are lots more chapters to be written yet.
Absolutely. Okay, so Libby, I think we have captured the nuance, very clearly in this episode, and I know that we need a lot of more time to cover more topics around it because this is very important topic, right, and very complicated at the same time.
Mm.
So let's just close it quickly. So aquaculture is expected to supply over 60% of seafood consumed globally by 2030, right? And which means the pressure on feed ingredients will only increase. And at the same time, the industry is exploring alternatives like insect proteins, microbial proteins. But marine ingredients, like we discussed, will likely remain a critical part of the feed basket. How do you see the future balance between whole fish, byproducts, and alternative proteins? And then looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of responsible marine ingredients?
Okay, well, lots of questions. I think there's room for everybody. You've said that we need to increase aquaculture if we're going to find nutritious food for a growing population. So aquaculture is not going anywhere. It's going to grow and continue to grow. So we need greater volumes of aquafeed. So in terms of alternatives or say additions, other ingredients, other feed ingredients, there's room for all. But marine ingredients will always remain the most digestible and nutritious form of food, but a component of aquafeed and the best source of omega-3 fatty acids. So you're always going to need marine ingredients. And so moving forward, I think we'll see, we have some big pelagic whole fish fisheries that are already approved and going to certified factories. I think we'll see the continued growth of our improver program. So the volumes of whole fish that's accepted through our improver program going through accepted factories will grow, and eventually that will move on to certification. And the byproducts, as people move towards circular economies, I think the volume and also the value, and by value I don't mean monetary value, but I mean the fact that the byproducts, the trimmings have been handled very well. I think we will see that grow, particularly in I spoke about tuna, where you've got regions of the world where they just don't have the infrastructure to deal with byproducts. So I think we'll see growth in all of that. I think that's really positive. The key will be to make sure that anything that is produced is responsible, traceable, and responsibly produced. I think the bar will continue to rise on that, particularly around assurances around human rights. So I think the future is very bright for marine ingredients. I was at the North Atlantic Seafood Forum the other week, and a large seafood producer in Northern Europe said it was a golden era for marine ingredients, and that was good news. So I think what we need to do is realize its full potential, and part of that is definitely through things like the Improver program. And in India, where you only have 2 FIPs at the moment, that potential is huge as a significant producer globally of marine ingredients. And the more we can do to help increase the number of FIPs, increase the number of accepted factories, and move those on their journey to full certification, then the better. There's a lot of opportunity out there.
Great. So my reflection would be that aquaculture feeds the world, but its sustainability begins long before the fish reaches the farm, right? And it begins in the ocean, in how we harvest, manage, and value marine resources. And the future of seafood will belong to those who can prove transparency, responsibility, and trust. And India, like you said, already has a big story, right? It just needs to be told.
Absolutely.
And we have a large marine ingredient industry, one of the largest shrimp export sector, a thriving domestic market ready to be tapped, and a strong policy alignment towards making India a self-sufficient India by 2047. Right? So I think what we now need is traceability and responsible sourcing systems that global markets trust. Right? And if we get this right, India could emerge not only as a seafood exporter, but also as a global leader in responsible marine ingredients. That's our vision.
And I think that's a vision that can be realised. You're moving on that journey in the right way, and it's I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, Richa, because I think it's been a good conversation. It's great to see the potential and the drive to continually improve and really make the most of those opportunities that are there for India.
Great, Libby. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.